Hi, everybody. This is Dr. Jen and Dr. Yvonne, and we are here to talk about Eat Your Damn Food, which happens to be the title of our latest book. Dr. Yvonne, it is a pleasure. I know it's been a minute since we were here together, and I feel like it's an important topic that we want to talk about. So I think where I'd love to start is if you could share a little bit about that favorite podcast of yours and what you started hearing on that podcast about this idea of people starting to compliment, and there's such a focus when somebody, right, loses weight.
Hello, Dr. Jen. Yes, thank you. Hello, everyone. So, yeah, one of my favorite podcasts is called We Can Do Hard Things, and it's with Glennon Doyle, her partner Abby, and her sister Amanda. And I just love their conversations. And I was listening to, I think it dropped today. Like I listened to it pretty much the moment they come out. I love their podcasts. And they were talking to someone, her name is Suleka Joud. I might be not saying her name correctly, but she is a really great author and artist. And so Glennon was sharing that she's recovering from anorexia and that she's had some moments where like she's had some difficult times, let's say with her anorexia, which have kept her body not in a healthy place. And then Suleika was sharing that this is the third time she goes through a relapse of cancer, and it's her third round of chemotherapy. And so both of them have gone out to promote their books and their art. And in these interactions with people, many compliments have been given about the way they look. And they were talking about being really sarcastic about it. Like Glennon was just kind of like, yeah, I have a secret. Like, someone asked her, like, what's your secret? And she's like, yeah, it's called anorexia. Like, not something, she didn't even say it that way. She goes, it's mental illness. It's
Mm.
not being well, and like she says like it's kind of a harsh reality to say that to someone, but she doesn't know any other way to answer it. And the same thing with Soleika. She was like, it's chemotherapy, and so that definitely has to shock the person who said that. But I do think that people go around giving compliments and actually seeing illness sometimes as like just because a person looks in a smaller body as if that's such a great thing, like they look so great. And
Mm.
yeah.
And Dr. Yvonne, I know this hits you personally. And I know not so long ago we were having some conversations about this because you were dealing with going through a pretty big surgery and how it affected you and your physical body. And the thing I loved is how honest and open you were about that, and that we were really able to talk about that. But like pretty recently, you got some of those compliments as well, and you were like, "Oh gosh, like how do I answer or how do I respond to some of those things?"
Yeah, it really hit home. And that's why I think we shifted to talk about this topic today, because I heard that today and I was like, it just reminded me. So last year was a really rough year for me. My colon perforated. So it took two surgeries, one in August and then one later on in December to repair my colon. I'm fine now, thank God. However, it was really rough. And as you can imagine, anything related to your GI system affects your eating and your ability to eat. And so it did affect me and my body did break down some. And so my body was in a smaller size by the end of the year. And then my daughter got married in February. So I have my second surgery in December. We have the bridal shower in January, and we have the wedding just 2 short months after. So I had not settled, I had not repaired, I had not gotten healthier again. Uh, However, it was one of the most beautiful, incredible, best days of my life. So I recognize that I came into the whole day just like with so much joy that I must have been exuding beauty. I think
You
really
were,
from
I was there.
inside. So I know, so I understand compliments. I get it. I do think I had a very good energy coming into it because I mean, as you can imagine, having gone through that throughout that year, I wasn't even sure I was going to be at that wedding. And in all reality, not to be morbid about it, but I could have not been there, right? And it would have totally changed everything. And so I felt so blessed to be there. at the same time, I can't even tell you, I can't even count how many people made comments about how great I looked. It had everything to do more about not about what I was exuding, but more about the size of my body, like really pretty direct comments about how much weight I had lost and kind of like how I looked, of which I kind of probably just dropped my mouth. I don't remember. I wish I would have been sarcastic. I could have been just as sarcastic as Glennon and Suleika, but I really didn't. I just kind of like, you're at a wedding, you smile and you move on to the next guest and say hello, right? Like, so I didn't really, but it really, like in reflection, it was something that, I mean, I've shared also, even when we've had our conversations here online, I've shared that I've recovered from an eating disorder. And old me would have gone to town with that information and had a really hard time with like the necessary recovery that I've had to had all these months later in order to get back to my healthy place, and thank God for all my therapy, thank God for my close friends, thank God for you and the conversations we've been able to have to make sure that like that doesn't affect me like it would have affected me in the past. But for our clients, when these types of things happen, I mean, life happens, health issues happen. And people just randomly, even people who knew what I had gone through, like they're just making comments about like as if we're so much better because we're in a smaller body. It just shows where our society is with this message.
Yeah. Dr. Vaughn, thank you for always being so open and honest about your own struggles, your own journey. And I know you do that with our clients, and it makes such a difference to have that kind of openness and to normalize also struggles. And, oftentimes the stories that we hear from our clients, especially that first story when they come into the office of kind of how their eating disorder started. I'm not going to say every client, but there is such a pattern where somebody says, well, I wanted to lose a few pounds, right? Like this is, I wanted to lose a few pounds. I started losing weight. I got all these compliments. And then I kind of kept going, and somewhere along the line, it got out of control. But that reinforcement is, I mean, how many times do we hear that, Dr. Vaughn? Almost like, I don't want to say word for word. Everybody has their own story and journey, but isn't that such a typical thing we hear,
Yeah, it fuels
right?
the fire. It's kind of like there's a fire brewing. It's dangerous. It's starting to like, gain momentum, and then these compliments come in and it just really aligns with the eating disorder side of the person's brain.
Yeah.
And allows then gives permission to the continuation of the behaviors that are creating the eating disorder. And that's how a lot of times it does get bigger. And
Yeah.
it happens with family, it happens with people, but also can happen in the medical offices.
Mm-hmm.
So there's lots of places where this gets
Yeah.
fueled.
Do you want to say a little bit more what you meant with the medical offices? Because, right, and we know it's not every medical office, but there can be that even in certain professional communities, right? It's like there's such this praise for sometimes people losing, and it's sometimes losing at any at any cost possible, right? And they're not even sometimes asking about the behaviors, like how did the person get here?
Yeah, no, that's the point. I mean, how many stories have we heard where the eating disorder had been missed by the medical community because as they were, getting deeper in their eating disorder, wherever, who knows where they started, but they weren't landing in like, the height and weight charts and things like no one's recognizing, and exactly what you said, no one's asking like what exactly are your behaviors? Like what's going on with your food? What's going on with your exercise? The questions, are you taking something? Like there's so many questions to be asked, and usually it's not. It's just being kind of looked at as a height per weight thing, a BMI, things that I think are very silly to be using as a medical assessment. And like the details are lost, and the person does not get the help or the referral to the person that can help them.
Mm. So, Dr. Vaughn, I was going to share one story about myself, but I think I'm going to share another one. And I think you probably know, but I had that experience, right? And I really hand chose this particular medical professional because she was really holistic and had a lot of experience working with women. And I had worked with other providers in the office, and I had such beautiful experiences. And this one particular visit, we were talking about weight because I was going through some different hormonal changes, and I was like, okay, yeah, my body is feeling different, but I was also feeling really good. I remember I was feeling like had my cute little outfit on, and I was feeling like really good. And I will tell you, oh my gosh, like I remember after that appointment, it was like an hour later, I felt like so dejected after this appointment. I also couldn't believe how much power I allowed this medical doctor to have over me. It was like, I'm feeling really good. I'm, eating mindfully. I'm doing my movement, added in some fun Zumba, and I was doing a little bit of weights, and I was feeling like really good. First of all, I wasn't even asked about any of my behaviors. I was ushered onto this little machine that like measured my body mass and my my muscle to fat ratio. And I mean, I almost didn't even give it second thought. I wish what I would have said is, I don't want to step on that machine. And then the next thing, it was like I was, told like, oh, like, well, you could try this, kind of diet, this and this pill. And I'm like, I mean, thank God I had enough, you know, mindfulness to be like, no, thank you. And then I do remember the doctor saying, well, that's good. Like, like it's better to do things naturally. And I'm like, well, why are you recommending that to me? And what the hell's up with this silly machine that like the number was so crazy also like where I was supposed to weigh. I was like, okay, I think I weighed that in like high school. Like I don't think it, at this age I'm going to be that weight anymore. Like it wasn't even like what she was basing the data on didn't even make sense. Now later I saw that, but in that hour, I remember going back to my car and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I feel really bad. I just paid a whole bunch of money for this doctor that I chose." I'm like, I'm very clear I cannot go back to see her. Like, this did not empower me in any way. And thank God it was like, whoa, like I know I have the skills, I know I have the support, but it was amazing what ended up like even in that short period of time. And I remember it kind of almost took me the day to kind of like, I want to say like recover from that experience. And thank God I did. Like, right, I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything she recommended. And and I was like, okay, it's time to find like somebody else that feels more in alignment with my values. And so I felt really good that I made those choices. But how about somebody who is more vulnerable to those kind of messages, and especially when it's somebody with that level of credential?
I mean, and I think it's important. I mean, yeah, I think it happens to anybody, no matter how prepared we feel like we are in those situations, because it is a level of judgment, right? Like, so in any time, no matter what, if you think about it, anybody judges us about something, it's very, I don't know really anybody who just flows into it really well. I think we do maybe with certain topics, but this is a difficult one, and it's, like when someone makes a comment like that, it comes across as a judgment that you don't know how you're taking, like you don't know how to take care of yourself. So I'm going to tell you how, and then we're going to use all these artificial ways to do it. At the same time, like you could see that at the time, but you were still being judged. So those negative feelings are always going to be there. And
And
we get defensive. We tend to get defensive as we should. And so, yeah, I just wish that more doctors understood that they're creating a negative environment, and that person leaves the office leaving so much worse than they came in. Like I remember you telling me the story, and it like broke my heart when you're like, I was feeling so cute. Like you are cute. You're so cute. Like it's
and
like
one part I want to add, because I think this was so important, I was never asked what I was actually doing
exactly.
in terms of my health. That was the dangerous part because it was like, under the guise of, and this means you're not healthy. And I'm like, look at my lab work. Did you ask me about my relationship with food? Did you ask me about my movement, my hydration, my sleep? Like, there was no asking me about any of my actual behaviors, which sort of blew me away because I sort of assumed if you're like in the holistic realm, like that's
To
usually
be
what they
interested.
focus on. And yeah, I remember saying that to you. Oh my gosh.
Well, I just want our viewers to kind of hear what you just said and recognize, like, is it a good fit for you if the doctor is not even questioning about your behaviors, or are you talking to people like us that sometimes they'll just trust, okay, they're talking to professionals that I know, a dietitian, a therapist, they're not questioning that. They're just taking, giving you a checklist or telling you what you should do based on what they're assessing about your height and your weight and on some silly machine, which, by the way, are not all that accurate anyway. The other thing I want the viewer to hear is that you never have to do something that feels like it's going like against you get that gut feeling. So that gut feeling, you don't want to step on the machine, or even you're on the machine already and you're like, what the hell am I doing on this machine? Jump off the machine.
Yeah.
Say, I'm not interested, or say, I don't do this. I'll wait with my dietitian, or I'll do a blind wait. I don't want to see it if they need to medicate, they need it for medication purposes or something, because sometimes they do need that number, but you do not need to do anything traditionally.
Hmm.
And you have the right to make all the decisions, not just about this, but all the way through when it comes to your own medical care. Your medical providers are your partners, or they should be your partners, not be your dictators.
Mm. So great. And I will tell you, I didn't even question the machine at the time. I was like, oh, this machine looks kind of cool. Maybe it'll like, maybe I'll get some really interesting data. And I was so surprised at what, how she used it. And it was almost like, oh, it's kind of feels like it's being used against me. But I want to go back to this thing around the compliments because sometimes that one can be tricky, right? Like, meaning you are noticing, like, when you were there for your daughter's wedding, looking so glowy and beautiful in your green dress and so proud and such a proud mama and feeling good. And like you said, so grateful that you were able to be there and feel good and be there, right? And sometimes, like, our natural reaction is we want to give a compliment. And so it's not like we're saying don't give a compliment, but it is maybe the way we're complimenting too,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, if someone would have said you look beautiful and it came in a different way and it didn't come packaged the other way, it would have been very different. You look so happy. Like, really, I feel like I was happy. And a lot of people did say that, which is really nice.
Mhm.
Uh, so I do think it's important to talk a little bit about, like, the things that like both of us did in these situations, right? Like, so for me, the very first thing was like I had you there at the wedding. I also had I want to say a handful of my really, really close friends that have, like, holding my hand through the whole year, who have been around, even some of them that have been around since my eating disorder. So I like I didn't even I it's not like we spoke about it that evening, but just having that presence and knowing that I had those people that I knew I could talk to about any of this after, which I did. I did for sure. So having healthy support and being aware of the people you have around you, and at least having someone that is mirroring, like, what we're talking about, that is not like that's not in that mode of, like, like your weight is what matters, because having a conversation with someone who thinks the same way is, you're just going to keep getting reinforced with the same message. So if
Mm.
you're ready to get out of the diet matrix, that we keep calling the diet matrix, as being in that diet centric, weight centric way of thinking, and it's what's in our book, it's kind of how are we getting out of the diet matrix. It's important that you do look at the people that surround you, and get at least some people aligned, and so that you can not take those other people all that seriously, or even start to eliminate people that are just really not serving you as a
Yeah.
whole.
Yeah. Our tribe matters. Our tribe
Absolutely.
really matters, right? And what's the thing you said that Is
My
it your
mom said,
mom?
my mom used to say in Spanish, I have to translate it, but basically she would say like, tell me who you hang out with and it'll tell me who you are.
Yeah. Yeah. So our tribe matters. Getting support matters, right? So being able to go to those individuals that you know are going to have your back and know are going to give you probably the healthier message. And the other thing I think is so important is is having the professionals, like we're saying, you get to choose. The professionals around you are your partners. So having partners, having people that you leave those sessions and maybe they are challenging you in this session, right? Because sometimes we want somebody to challenge us, but I don't think we leave a session feeling completely like, terrible and dejected. Like, if you're starting to feel like that, that's something to really pay attention to. And, right, like I always say for myself, I have a whole great team of healers that I use at different points, right? Like, I have my therapist and I will do some work with her when something arises for a period of time, or I have some other, my acupuncturist or some other healer people that I have them, as part of my village to kind of continue to keep me healthy because this journey never stops. Like the relationship with self, the relationship with food, the relationship with body, bodies change over time. So we're dealing with body image throughout the lifespan, and that changes too.
So one last thing I want to say is just like also think it's important when we're on the flip side. So like when we see somebody like do like you see them proud of their weight loss, it's a hard one to be at. Like by not mentioning it, not giving them a compliment on their looks. That doesn't mean you cannot compliment if they're, their energy, their like how they're coming across. That's a good thing without having to circle it back to the size of their bodies. And sometimes it feels like you're not being nice if you're not complimenting, right? And what I want to say is based on all the stories again that we've heard, like it is kind not to compliment because the reality is that most people that lose weight are going to gain it back and gain more, right? Because most the diets don't work. That's what happens. People go up and down and they cycle is what we call it, right? And so those compliments become daggers
Mm,
should that weight loss not persist. Those compliments become also daggers if that person feels that they have to hold on to that weight loss for their very life. So they have to continue doing disordered behaviors to be there. So again, catching yourself and not complimenting on the physical weight loss, using other words as possible is going to be the kindest thing you can do.
great. Thank you, Dr. Yvonne. Can't wait for our next conversation around our book.
Thank you, Dr. Jen.
Mhm.
See you soon.